How many water jugs
How
do
many
you
water
need?
jugs do you need? Well, I had to have pizza for dinner tonight because that was the fastest thing I could do. Al took off on
Not always a bad night when you have to have pizza.
Oh, I look forward.
It's the frozen pizza. We are live on YouTube.
Still got,
Not
oh,
this.
6:15 was our start. 6:30.
Well, getting organized, everybody, just to let you know, I've got some windows open at the back and up here, and it's just so I've got a carbon dioxide monitor. I'm trying to keep fresh air in the room so we're not breathing each other's breath and whatever we may or may not be carrying, just take it away, okay? So if it gets too cold,
Shall I crack the windows up and more?
you're fine, I think now, but
It's optional.
yeah. That worked fine earlier today, so whatever, yeah.
I feel fresh. Thank you.
All right, folks. So I will call this order to meeting. We've already had some long meetings today, so I apologize if I get a little bit tongue-tied in our procedure. But I will call this meeting to order at 6:24 p.m. here today, which is exciting. We acknowledge with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, whose people have been stewards of these lands surrounding the Quellahem, Bowen Island. Welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, and thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. As we do at our regular council meetings, I'd like to introduce the other elected members of Bowen's Council here this evening who are joining both in person and online. Starting on my right, we have Councillor Sue Ellen Fast. On my left, we have Councillor Tim Wake. To his right, Councillor Alison Morse. And online this evening, we have Councillor Judy Getty, Councillor John Saunders, and Councillor Alex Jurgensen. We are also joined by several members of our professional staff team here tonight, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Liam Edwards, our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insignia, and other members of Bowen's professional staff who will be presenting agenda items here this evening. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the public comment and question and answer portions of the meeting, your presence and voice will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca and is being streamed virally on YouTube right now and will be the subject of TikTok dances in the future. This council meeting is the official forum for conducting the business of local government. We all love our home. We are all passionate about what happens here. And I'd encourage everyone to maintain a respectful and constructive tone during the meeting and to direct comments for council during the public comment and Q&A session to myself. The agenda and full council package for tonight's meeting is available on bowenislandmunicipality.ca for folks who are following here in the room or online. And that said, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda and the late items for the April 11th, 2023 regular council meeting.
I'd like to know where the late items are going to be and the numbers. Are they all on the?
Yes.
I opened the wrong thing, sorry.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe I'll have our corporate officer just give us a briefing on what the late items are for this evening.
So in your on-table package, it's included item 6.1. There are 3 recommendations, which is a ratification from the committee of the whole meeting this morning. 8.1A, which is a letter regarding the development variance permit application for Enswell Farm. And then 12.1, we have additional, sorry, I haven't counted them, but many letters from the public regarding the proposed regional park at Cape Roger Curtis that were received between last Thursday and today at 4 p.m.
Thank you. So a motion to approve the agenda and the late items. So moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Morse, whose hand is still in the air. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the agenda and the late items, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Aye.
Moving on to public comments. How many public comments do we have this evening?
We have 5 this evening.
5 this evening. So we will do 2.5 minutes per comment. And the way that we work public comments, for those of you that might be new, we'll set a timer for 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So when you hear the timer go off, you've got another full 20 seconds to really like drive your point home and make your case. And with that, our first speaker this evening is
Noah Price Jones.
all right, Mr. Price Jones, if you want to join us here at the front.
How you guys doing this evening?
Very well. How are you?
Good. Let me know when the timer starts.
Yeah.
Good. My name is Noah Price Jones. I run Home Farm Gardens and I operate out of Enswell Farm, which is now turning into Enswell Farm, currently owned by Matt Sauter. I'm here to support the variance application for that because it directly affects the business down there and 12 locals on this island. Matt employs 12 people on that farm and 3 families. When he took over the farm 2 years ago, he took that farm from falling apart into the ground, fences, the barn was falling over. It was in bad shape. And we worked with the ALC to find a way that we can grow food on Bowen Island, which is a losing endeavor. It is not a financial endeavor, and balance it with the Airbnb and weddings within all our restrictions with the ALC, which is really hard to do. And we've been able to balance it to a not a money-making thing, but breaking even. So I'm really concerned that if this doesn't go through for Matt, I could lose that. But when I could lose its food security with us, we could lose our jobs down there at the farm, and I would have to revert back to, I don't want to landscape anymore. I can't build rock walls. I'm getting older. I want to farm. I want to do things with sheep. I want to host great community events at the farm, So I'm really in support of it. And I hope you guys really consider the application because he's doing a lot of really great stuff for our community and supporting a lot of locals. When I met Matt, I said, should we bring in migrant workers to get the farm, to get the cost down? He's like, nope, living wages, and we hire locals. That's what he said to me. So he's a really, really solid human. And I really hope you guys listen to what he has to say and take note of it. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Price Jones.
Matt Sauter.
I'm looking around to see who this guy knows talking about me. He seems like a really nice guy.
He was a good opening act. He was a good opening act.
First of all, thanks for giving us the chance to speak, and I'll try and keep it brief. I'm sure you don't want to be here forever. I'll be really honest. When I found the Enswell property was for sale, my first thought was the 1,000 or so feet of waterfront that it's got and the ability to build a beautiful waterfront home for me and probably for my family. My son Will is here with me tonight. And that's still a really big interest of mine, I would say, is to be able to do that. We've applied for a variance to be able to build some more space because the property is already covered with too many buildings, almost all of which are the farm. The other variance we've applied for is to keep the farmhouse as a secondary dwelling. And as Noah kind of pointed out very articulately, it's tough for us to farm and have the math work. It's a tough endeavor in a small community farm. I think if you want to be able to farm and make money, you need 10,000 acres and combines as wide as this room and stuff like that. So what's happened for us is we've decided that by tapping into some of the tourism money that we can access and having an Airbnb, hosting events like weddings, we can make the whole package work. So we're super keen to be able to keep that farmhouse as an Airbnb and keep the whole property working and functional and still let me and my family build a house down on the water it's a big amount of waterfront. We're not looking to build 12 houses on the water. We're trying to build one. It does remind me of something I want to clarify is when I saw the application, it says we want to build 750 square meters, which is over 8,000 feet. The house is a little over 4,000 feet. It's not tiny or anything. I don't want to describe it as something it's not, but it's not a 8,000 foot behemoth. The other space past the 4,000 feet is for covered parking, some hardscaping, and a concrete pad that won't be visible from the water to put in solar panels to power the project. So I think I'm out of time. If not out, very close. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for coming to represent this morning or this afternoon.
Liz Nankin.
Thank you so much. I know it's unprecedented times, and I'm asking you to dip your foot into the land of make-believe. I'm here representing, I'm the producer of a play, God of Carnage, that I want to produce on the upstairs venue of the Bowen Cider House. There's a good neighbor agreement that stipulates that the Bowen Cider House, Alistair and Jeanette Johnson, has 10 venues only per year. The Johnsons want to parlay their venues out of parties, but into cultural events that enhance Bowen. Our group of actors, I am going to be producing as well as I have 40 years of costume design. My husband, Michael Nankin, has over 40 years of being a professional director in film. The actors, Michael Carl Richards, Michelle Harrison, Matthew Harrison, are Bowen residents and professional actors that are on series. This is going to be a labor of love. This is, we want to do this because we love theater and we want to do theater in our home. And as you know, venues in Bowen are very hard. Because we have a professional crew and professional actors, we have to have a flexibility for the venue. We have a wonderful theater, Trinidad, but it's not flexible for our actors to be able to have professional work on a series, work on going to their auditions, and then have accessibility to craft a high-level production in a theater school. We want to do the Good Neighbor stipulations that the operating hours are from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday on Friday and Saturday to 10 p.m. And we will be well underneath those hours. This is a one-act play that we want to construct. It's a living room one-act play. We would open our doors at 7 p.m. We would do a talk back and a cultural give back for the community. And we have to have a time, a date, and a place in order to procure the rights to the play. The rights to the play that we're buying. And this is not a money-making venture for Alistair and Jeanette Johnson at all. They are giving us the venue. And this is not a money-making venture of any of us. We're putting up our own money. In fact, I don't even know if we'll break even. We want to do this play because we love theater. We want to do it at our home. And it sets a new level of theater bringing to the island because we're having our community center, our Black Box Theater. And I think if we can start and say, we've done this, we've produced this, this will open the door to more levels of wonderful productions that can be done and bring in other levels of actors. Plus, we have to work with Toady. We have to work with our other theater productions on island. So we need to have an answer that's reasonable in a calendar because Toady is also planning their season. So again, the ask is not to have our 8 performances be part of the Cider House events under the Good Neighbor Agreement. Thanks so much. And I have a printout of my, what was sent to Sophie. And it's all registered with you. So thanks. And I can answer any questions you want to.
Thank you, Ms. Nankin.
Thank you.
Kristen Hauser? Hanson?
Oh, I signed in additionally with them. Michael's next.
Okay. Michael Crowley.
I'm speaking on behalf of Gods of Carnage too, as one of the actors who wants to put on the show. Liz pretty much covered it all, so I won't add too much more, only to say that it's a passion project for us. It's not something that we're all working actors on film and television, and we're not doing this for any other reason than to bring something that we think is really cool to Bowen. It's a challenging play for the audience and with the actors, and I think it'll be a really interesting play on Bowen. And I think it's a relatively high reward for relatively low cost in terms of letting us use that space for a few additional nights. And I've been really excited to be a part of it. I'm excited at the idea of it, so I hope it works out. We did explore other venues, and there just wasn't a lot of other venues that were going to work, given the parameters of this particular show. And it is an intimate sort of night. It's not going to be, we're not looking to fill it with a ton of people. It would be, something like 50 people all told over the course of whatever 6 nights. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. That's everybody? Okay. Moving on to item 3, is there any councillors that would like to pull items from the consent agenda? Anyone online that would like to pull items from the consent agenda?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. I'd like to pull 12.12, which is the letter from MP Weiler regarding the Housing Accelerator Fund. Aside from that, would I be able to get a motion that council approve the items as outlined in the April 11th, 2023 consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Getty, who is large and in charge on our screen back here. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Item 12.12 is the letter from MP Weiler on the Housing Accelerator Fund. I just wanted to check with either staff or council whether that would be worth referring to the Housing Advisory Committee and whether there's any benefit to this fund that can be seen for Bowen Island.
Well, Councillor Wake and I attended the housing forum that UBCM sponsored last week. I managed to stay awake. Catching the 6:20 ferry was hard. AM ferry. There's still a lot of details and things, and there was Daniel, we had a 1-hour webinar the other day, Thursday, on some of the details, and so it's probably should be referred to the Housing Committee just for information and discussion, but I wasn't too sure, and I know that Daniel Martin's, I think Natasha's looking into, I don't know whether we've got enough information to actually be able to put, because you've got to figure out what your housing growth target is now, and there's formulas, and then you've got to exceed that by 10%. So whether we even will be able to fit within the parameters, and it's all for it's to new growth, not existing. So it's in order to speed up something more than we've already got planned. So I think there's some background research we've got to do, and numbers and stats to figure out whether it's even feasible for us.
Okay. Councillor Wick?
I'd be fine with referring it, but it's already there.
It's already there, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fast.
I'd like to refer it formally, and then it's actually council is formally requesting the Housing Advisory Committee to receive the information. And then it's kind of out there more in the public realm about what is required for that kind of funding. So I will move that item 12.12, a letter from MP Weiler about housing, be referred to the Housing Advisory Committee.
All right. Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of the referral, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
Thank you, Councillor Jurgensen. We got you registered.
Thanks. And by the way, that also helps people find it later when they're looking for that kind of info, because they can go, oh yeah, that must be in our meeting notes because we talked about it. Anyway, just to ease all the communication.
Okay. No delegations this evening, no business arising from the minutes. Bylaws were dealt with in consent agenda. Moving on to item 8.1 in staff reports. Introduction to development variance permit application, 1461 Mount Gardner Road. I will hand it over to our planning department.
Sorry, the chair, was there the referral from the committee of the whole as item 6.1?
Yes. 6.1 is our Cape Project Curtis motions.
That is right. Not following my on table package here. So item 6.1.
Or do we want to change the order and deal with the other? I guess you've got staff lineup.
Yeah, let's keep going with the agenda the way it is.
Yeah, with item 6.1.
Yeah.
So item 6.1, ratification of recommendations from the committee of the whole meeting held April 11th, 2023. We have 3 recommendations there. We could opt to ratify all 3 of them at once, or we could go one by one. I will look to council for direction. Fast.
Seeing as how we passed these unanimously a few hours ago, earlier today, I'd like to move that council ratify the whole group of them, and I'm happy to move them.
I'm going to ask them to be severed.
Okay? So I will move the first one. That council directs staff to bring a report to the April 24th regular council meeting with, number 1, draft bylaws to amend the official community plan and land use bylaw to permit the Metro Vancouver proposal for a regional park at Cape Project Curtis with overnight use of up to 100 campsites. And 2, any updates on responses to referrals made at the February 27th council meeting.
I'll second that.
Seconded. Any discussion on this one? Councilor Wake?
Just for clarity, I just want to point to use of up to 100 campsites. It does not mean we're approving 100 campsites. And so that got muddled in earlier messaging, so I just want to make sure it's clear. This really initiates the process.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Fast.
Yeah, and just to speak to my motion, that's also consistent with what Metro Vancouver Parks has applied for in their rezoning application. So I'm in support of this.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay. That carries unanimously. Moving on to recommendation 2, what is council's disposition on this one? Councilor Morse.
In looking and having, because this was sort of not something I was expecting at the cow meeting, I'm just a little concerned about, and I thought maybe we need to just maybe rethink or I have no problem at all with a joint committee to develop the management plan for the park. My concern is how we can have a joint steering committee when the applicant, where we're working together to proceed with a rezoning. When you've got the applicant, and we need as council to ask for information.
Right.
And the applicant needs to supply it. So having a joint committee that decides, whereas council's the one that sort of say, we want this, and the board or the Parks Committee will come back and say, you know, we'd be willing to negotiate for this. So I'm not quite sure just how the steering committee would function in a rezoning application. No problem at all with the development of a management plan for the park and that kind of thing. But I just, so I don't know whether it's something we can actually do, you know, fitting in the parameters of rezoning. So that was.
Yeah, that's a point that's well taken. Councillor Fast, and then Councillor Getty.
Thank you. I was wondering if we could change the word steering to liaison, which would better reflect for the purposes of better communicating and leading the rezoning and amendment process down there. Sort of joint liaison might be a better term for that. Mm-hmm. Or would it be advisory to the formal process that that all parties are engaged in currently? So it could also be a joint advisory liaison committee or something like that. Or we could just call it a joint committee. Because we're asking them to establish it, so it could be a dialogue. Anyway, I'm fine with the idea of changing the word steering.
Okay. Councillor Getty?
It seems to me that it's a good idea in terms of trying to work through some of these Gordian knots that are involved in this thing. And I'm wondering if we could, I take Allison's point in terms of it being a proponent, and I'm wondering if we can get some sort of precedent or advice, possibly legal advice in terms of whether it's been done before and how it's gotten set up. So if they've done it effectively in 2 other parks, how did they, at what point did they negotiate it and how did they negotiate it in terms of the precedents that may be out there? And just trying to figure out whether or not it's possible, because I think it has potential of helping us work through a lot of the misunderstandings and try to come up with, if it's possible, to come up with something that we can all live with.
I see our CAO is staring in his chair beside me here, so I'll hand over to him.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, Councillor Getty, that the reference to the 2 other examples has no relation to a rezoning application. It was about references to co-management of regional parks. And I doubt that there were rezoning requirements involved there, or I don't know that there were. I've never heard of an example where a local government engages in this type of relationship with a proponent for a rezoning. Mm. It's interesting idea, but yeah, I've never heard of it before. Right. And to the points that Councillor Morris raised, which I think are quite valid, that it could raise a lot of concerns about the rezoning process itself. Mm-hmm. As a committee, and the way I was understanding it initially was thinking about for the management plan makes a lot of sense, and I think that would be a really great approach that I don't think is conventional for Metro, but I think they would be willing to consider it. Right.
Yeah, as I mentally run through it in my head, it's a tricky relationship because it's a regional government, but also the proponent of a rezoning application. And I appreciate Councillor Morris's insight that really muddies the water between the 2 organizations, particularly when a rezoning application is running through. Feel you stirring in.
Yeah,
what are you thinking?
I just think it's ultimately the decision lies with council. And so then to be trying to be part of a committee with the proponent to arrive at a solution that they obviously want presupposes what council's intentions are. So I think council might be in a safer position to be able to express its desires and needs by not being involved in a committee at that.
Yeah. Councillor Wade?
I'm thinking, I was thinking this earlier today, shouldn't we be separating the rezoning from the management plan? And I think we absolutely want this for the management plan, but we also talked today about just building the trust relationship. And I'd like to find a way that we can do that through the rezoning. But are we not waiting until the rezoning is done before the management plan really gets going in earnest? And if that's the case, why don't we do two different things? So why don't we do this for the management plan and call it something else, or do it a different way for the just to somehow encourage collaborative communication during the rezoning.
What I would offer is that I believe that desire for collaboration and the way that we could set it up is something that I could message to Metro Vancouver without perhaps needing to ratify this recommendation. And perhaps as we get further on down the road, would be more of an opportunity just to actually have a meeting with some of our council, prospective staffs, and politicians all in one room to advance this thing after the land deal closes.
Great.
Does that make more sense instead of establishing a formal governance body of any kind that ties us together?
Yeah, I think that's safer.
Okay.
Yeah.
We could at this point change the references to park rezoning and OCP amendments to development of the management plan.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can bring that forward as another resolution at a later time.
That presupposes the, I mean, that could be a condition of rezoning.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah.
That council wants to be part of the management plan steering committee or wants to create this. But again, I wouldn't put it now because again, you're presupposing that it's a decision made.
Right.
But more so it's like, this is a condition, should the rezoning be approved, we expect this.
Okay.
On to it for now. Sorry.
Yeah, so we could move, there could be a motion either to not vote on this, or we could move the recommendation and watch it go down in flames for giggles if we wanted to. Councillor Fast?
I have a suggestion, is to just leave here on the table and go on to recommendation number 3.
Okay.
Save it for later.
Sure.
Do we need to vote on that decision, or do we?
I think it's cleaner if there is a vote of some kind, because it's coming back to us for ratification. So, yeah, I would, so the motion I would make is I move not to consider recommendation, or I move not to ratify recommendation 2 at this time.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay. And that carries. Moving on to recommendation 3, which is that Mayor and Council write a letter to the Metro Vancouver Board and the Regional Parks Committee indicating support for continuing the process for development of a regional park. Roger Curtis, for a disposition on this recommendation.
Do we need to put the word rezoning in front of process?
We could, it would be both rezoning and OCP amendment.
Do we need to discuss, does rezoning not include an OCP amendment?
I believe they've come in as 2 separate applications, the rezoning application and an OCP amendment application.
Okay.
Councillor Fast?
Councillor Wick had his hand up.
Oh, thank you for pointing me over to Councillor Wick. Councillor Wick?
No? Okay, I'm gonna move. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Councillor Jurgensen does have his hand up,
All
so
right.
I will go to him.
Just reread the letter one final time before prior to the meeting, the proposed letter, and would feel that we would benefit from in where it says camping on Bowen types and numbers of campsites, comma, and then continues with the rest of the sentence. I would suggest that we put camping on Bowen, number and types of campsites in parentheses from 0 to 100, right parenthesis, comma, and then continue with the rest of the sentence, just to show that the intention here is to explore the process, not to give any direction that it is, that we are going to have to approve some camping as part of this process.
Okay, and so that's just to be clear, that's a desire to amend the text of the recommendation number 3 here?
No, he's talking about the draft letter.
He's talking about the draft letter. Okay. My suggestion would be, I know that there has been a draft letter circulating. This motion commits us to sending a letter. Perhaps we could connect after the adjournment of this meeting, get the wording right, and then get it out, knowing that time is sensitive.
Okay, no problem. I just wasn't committing us to the draft that had been circulated or not. So thank you.
Absolutely. Councillor Fast?
So I move then that the ratification of recommendation 3, I move that mayor and council write a letter to Metro Vancouver Board and the Regional Parks Committee indicating support for continuing the process for development of a regional park with camping at Cape Roger Curtis.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Right, so that is 6.1. Now we are on to. Thank you to Mr. Martin for having me keep my eyes on the ball on the agenda. Moving on to item 8.1 is introduction to development variance permit application 1461 Mount Gardner Road. Planner back is here to tell us about this one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sorry, let's just share my screen. Okay, so again, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a development variance permit application for 1461 Mount Gardner Road. It's a 140-acre parcel in the northern area of the island. So the variance at hand, or the issues, is regarding lot coverage as well as the floor area of a detached secondary suite. So basically, there have been a number of buildings added to the property over time, largely for agricultural use. So the existing lot coverage now exceeds the maximum allowable, plus they've proposed a new residence. So in total, they're requesting maximum lot coverage increase from 1,500 square meters to 2,880 square meters. The other issue is that with the addition of a new residence, there are currently multiple residences on site, so those will be decommissioned with the exception of one farm residence to be retained. So that would be retained by deeming it a detached secondary suite, but it does exceed the maximum floor area for one. So that the second request is to increase maximum floor area of a detached secondary suite from 140 square meters to 188. Process-wise, the application has been received, reviewed. Notices were sent out in March for the introductory meeting today. If council supports the recommendation, then notices will be issued later this month for a consideration date of May 8th, 2023. So that recommendation is that that notice be given that development variance permit 2023-0065 be considered by council at the meeting of May 8th, 2023. And the council authorizes staff to give notice in accordance with section 499 of the Local Government Act to properties within 100 meters of 1461 Mount Gardner Road. Thank you.
Thank you to the planner. Questions, Councillor Fast?
Yeah, a quick question. How many properties were within 100 meters? And just wondering if we should increase it because of the size of the property and the way that properties are distributed there.
Yeah, off the top of my head, don't have exact number of properties. Not a whole lot, less than between a dozen and 2 dozen probably. So very little considering how large the property is. So yeah, it'd be perfectly reasonable to increase that radius.
Because I think it might be better to say 300 meters or something else that makes sense to sort of capture the neighborhood there. I know you've sent it out ahead of time to 100, so that's great. And but wondering, is that a big issue? Is it a problem?
Not at all.
Okay. Thanks. And then I just want to speak in favor of this, sorry, I keep taking this off. In favor of this proposal because I think food security is a big issue and we want to keep our options for local homegrown food is terrific. And the rural character of the island that we're charged to preserve and protect through the Islands Trust is part of that as well. And here it's, having worked on Collins Farm, I know a little bit about how difficult it is to make any kind of living from a farm and or make any kind of profit. And so I support the giving notice. So that's where I'm at currently.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Getty.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I can ask the planner, please, if you could go back in your slides to the map. Okay.
Yeah.
Whoop.
Sorry.
Maybe start me the second one. Okay. So on the upper right, looks like a topographical map there. The building in gray on the far left side of that, is that the proposed new building?
No, that's an existing building. Proposed new would be, if you look in the top right image, the large gray shaded structure near the waterfront, that's the proposed new dwelling.
That's on the left of this.
Top right, the image in the top right corner, it's on the left side of that image. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So on the map that's on the left, it looks like it's an aerial photograph in black and white, and it says Galbraith Bay on the far left, and there's a red square rectangle around an area. Is that what is shown in the topographical map to the right of it?
That's correct. Yeah, the red square near Galbraith Bay. That's the image in the top right.
Okay. And the other red rectangle that's down in the bottom right of that aerial photograph, is that where the farmhouse is, the existing farmhouse?
That's correct. Yeah, and that's kind of blown up in the bottom right area of the screen, not the furthest bottom right, not that little one, but the square that has a number of buildings in it. In the bottom left of that panel is the existing farm residence.
And the rest of the little barns and outbuildings that are around that. And then there's another rectangle up in the upper right of the aerial photograph. What is that?
I couldn't tell you what that building, the use is. It's just showing an existing building. As far as I know, that's the only building outside of the kind of farm area in the area where the new residence is. I couldn't tell you more than that.
All
I
right.
see a few hands up in the group.
Yep, that's okay.
Where in this, either the overhead aerial shot or the topographical map, where is this proposed new building going in?
The proposed new residence so looking at the topographical map, it's within the red hatched area right next to Galbraith Bay. And then corresponding, top right corner of our screen, you got the kind of contour map, so that gray shaded structure, that's the proposed new building, the new dwelling.
Okay. And that's in addition to the old house that's there?
Sorry, what was the question?
The original house.
The original house, that's located in, my mouse. So I'm trying to point in, I don't know if you can see it, my mouse on the screen, but I'm trying to point at where the existing farm residence is, bottom left corner of that red square.
But no, I think my clarification question falls on the same thing. There isn't already a house on the property, or there used to be.
There are currently multiple residences.
Yeah, so where's the so if my memory is correct, there was a house as you sort of came in the lower driveway.
Right.
Another house.
Sewer.
Yeah, another house down near the water.
No, I just mean on the screen, if somebody could point.
Sure.
Well, the problem is they can't see.
So, hopefully you can see my mouse there. So, as you mentioned, just as you come into the property, there's kind of a house just off the entrance road. So, that's the farm residence to be retained. That's the one to be deemed a detached secondary suite. So that one is to be kept and not decommissioned or anything.
One up there.
Now moving way up here, in this square. So again, this square corresponds with all this stuff over here. So this is one existing residence, and this is another existing, I guess we call it a cottage, very, very small, very old.
Yeah.
So both of those are to be decommissioned. Those will just be accessory buildings. And then over here, the gray shaded structure, that's the brand new proposed residence.
That's the proposed new building, the gray?
That's right.
Ah, okay.
And the other two would be decommissioned.
That's right.
What does that mean in terms of, they would no longer be used as residents?
That's right. They'd have to remove all their kitchen facilities.
Would they be demolished?
No, they'll be retained otherwise just as accessory buildings.
Okay.
Any further questions, Councillor Getty, before I move to the
No,
rest of
thank
the
you.
board? Councillor Morse, then Councillor Fast.
Okay,
Councillor Morse, Councillor Wake, then Councillor Fast.
the one that's a house in the, I totally agree with leaving the farmhouse the way it is. And it's a neat old building, so you wouldn't want to muck around with it. The one as you come in the lower area, I thought it was a perfectly good residence and we need housing, so why would we consider decommissioning it rather than allowing 2 detached secondary suites, given the size of the property and the distance they are from one and the other?
To respond, the bylaw only allows them one principal residence and one detached secondary suite, so they just don't have the option of having additional beyond deeming one as a detached secondary suite. So that's just, they're decommissioning those other ones just to be in compliance with their bylaw.
So the new bylaw that the province is suggesting we're going to impose on all the municipalities, it might be allowed. It just seems a loss. I'm just thinking, but to allow that, what you're basically telling me is we'd have to go through a rezoning, not a variance application.
To allow multiple residences, right?
Yeah, okay. So that's not out of, I mean, that's, okay. But by removing the kitchen, the kitchen could be back at some point.
Yeah, they could, yeah. We wouldn't allow them if they already have a principal residence and a detached secondary suite, but yeah.
Sleeping cottage for the kids.
Sure.
Okay.
Councillor Wake?
The idea of renovating the existing house into a farm office and a suite so that the suite could actually conform to the 140 meter maximum.
It's possible in concept. I know in the layout of the building, like we normally wouldn't, we would only approve a building the way in the setup you've described if they had separate entrances to those separate uses. So the home office use would have to be fully separate use, not just a room within the detached secondary suite kind of thing. That's the only way we can really enforce that. And it did not sound like the building was set up that they could easily just delineate part of it as a different feature. So again, it could be possible through heavy construction or renovation additions. But yeah, we're pretty much left with looking at the layout as it stands.
Sorry, Councillor Fast, I'm going to go to first time speakers first. So Councillor Jurgensen.
All right. One question, and this is maybe outside the purview of this, but since the applicant had indicated, the use of weddings and that kind of stuff, and it sounds like this detached secondary suite, which is too big to be a detached secondary suite without the variance. Is there any kind of provisions or measures that we can put in place just to ensure that any large groups would stay towards the middle of the property to reduce the amount of nuisance that could be caused to neighbors? I'm honestly just trying to grasp this because the property is so big. And maybe I'm completely off the mark and there's no issue to worry about there. That's one question I have. The second one is there anything that could be done in approving this to retain those other cottages as dwellings, as Councillor Morse suggests, since housing is something we are definitely lacking on the island, and it would probably be helpful to the proponent as well if that could be retained for that use. So it sounds like a win-win if we could make that work somehow.
It's Councillor Jurgensen. The first question, I can't think of any way that could be enforced. I don't think of anything you chime in, but yeah, I can't think of anything anyway that's too broad to kind of be enforced any way I can think of. The second question about being able to retain them as dwellings. Not under the existing zoning. Of course, subdivision is a possibility for the site. That's something we haven't really discussed yet. It stands to reason that they wanted to retain some of those buildings. They can be subdivided as their own lot. Of course, that's just kind of throwing that idea out there. You have to deal with access and a number of other things, but that's the main thing that comes to mind. Apart from rezoning this entire 140-acre site, would be that just a small subdivided lot could have a residence on it. That's the thought that occurs to me. But
Is the request staff discuss that possibility with the proponent between now and the date that we are to consider this application, just to see if there's any appetite for that?
we can discuss it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so councillors, just as a note, we've gone through one round of questions already. For the sake of time, given that this is a notice, we can either move forward or we can open up to another round of questions. Councillor Fast.
I think this will be brief. Regarding the farm office idea, I didn't hear that from the proponent. And I think the farmers and the owners and the business plans will dictate whether you need a farm office or not. Nowadays, everything's mobile. And I think people, maybe your farm office is your vehicle. I just don't, I didn't hear that from the proponent, so I'm reluctant to stick somebody with a farm office that they don't need. Anyway, my question for the planner is setback from the sea. I'm looking at that big gray building, and I'm seeing I meant to ask this earlier, my apologies. The setback from the present natural boundary, those dotted lines seem to run through the building. Are there any setback concerns?
No, they do comply with minimum setback under the bylaw. So it's normally 30 meters. There is directly below that in our bylaw. It states that it can be lowered to 50 meters, provided that some of the effective that the average measurement of the houses on properties on either side of this property. So they actually provided that info. They took measurements of the setback of the sea for both neighboring properties, and the average came out to 50 meters. So that's what they've proposed for their
1.5?
Yeah, 1.5, 15.
Thank you. I couldn't.
Sure.
It's my ears. Okay, thank you. So I'm prepared to move the motion.
I'm going to go, just because we are in second round and I see Councillor Getty still has her hand up, I will see if there's any additional or new information or questions that she would like to ask.
Yes, please. Has there been any discussion about heritage protection for the farmhouse and the other older house that's on Galbraith Bay?
Councillor Getty, kind of in general, that was the intent with preserving this house, but not haven't discussed actually like officially designated as a heritage building under the Heritage Act.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions being done, I will look to council for a disposition of this. Councillor Fast.
Yeah, I'd be happy to move. I'm going to change the 100 meters to 300 just when you get there. I move that notice given that council will be considering the issuance of development variance permit DVP 2023-0065 for the variance of maximum lot coverage for existing agricultural buildings and the maximum floor area of a detached secondary suite for 1461 Mount Gardner Road, legally described as Block D, except in part reference plan 13711, district lots 1334 and 1947 plan 515. I'll start that. 15667, PID 003-358-887 at the May 8th, 2023 meeting of council. And that council authorized staff to give notice for the consideration of issuance of DVP 2023-0065 in accordance with section 499 of the Local Government Act to all properties within 300 meters of the legal boundary of 1461 Mount Gardner Road, legally described as Block D, except in part reference plan 13711, district lots 1334 and 1947 plan 15667, PID 003-358-887.
All right, it's been moved.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion on the motions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Planner Backen.
One question. Was there any interest in a site visit? Everybody.
No, I meant to tour with the cursor, whatever.
Oh, okay.
Item 8.2, asset management update and next steps from Patrick Graham, our Director of Engineering.
Hi, Council. This is a bit of an update to the capital planning discussion that we had at the committee hall meeting, 27th. The recommendation coming out of that meeting was to prioritize asset management. It was, I think, very clear to everybody that the lack of advancement in asset management was really hampering long-range capital planning and decision-making around capital needs and the reserve fund discussions we were having. So we are doing a number of ongoing efforts to advance asset management planning in the municipality, and some of those are laid out in the report. And it's certainly not the first efforts that have been made. There have been staff here longer than me that remember, and councillors that remember efforts to advance asset management planning on many fronts. And looking at where those efforts, why it didn't become embedded in our standard practices as a municipality and the decisions that we make on finances and capital projects and all sorts of things. It really comes back to not having enough focused resources to the task of asset management. Also a recognition that it's a long-term process. It's a never-ending process that's really takes quite a lot of time and effort to advance, to set up to the point where it's informing how we make our decisions about capital planning. And we need to have capacity built internally. It needs to be, again, embedded in our operations and how we do business. And that's really the thinking behind sort of takeaway from the direction that council gave to prioritize. In the interim between then and now, we actually had a session with a consultant that's supporting us and setting up our asset management systems and tools. It was looking at a state of asset management maturity across a whole suite of aspects that need to be advanced in to really have effective asset management decision-making. So looking at organization of people, asset information, strategy and planning, risk management, defining levels of service, and then the financial management and capital planning. Looking at all of those things and our state is fairly basic on most of that. And we were advised to expect a 3 to 5 year process to really advance to the point where we're advanced and really following best practice of asset management. I know it may have created expectation that we could be quicker than that, and that certainly is possible. Currently, we've got the bulk of the effort is within the Public Works Department, the Utilities Coordinator, the Public Works Coordinator, and myself, really working on the side of our desks to advance this. And it would be the same for the Chief Financial Officer and CEO. certainly side of their desks. So we're not proposing to hire a dedicated asset management coordinator. That's something I've had in the past, and it works very well for this organization and our size, and also getting back to that need to build capacity internally, recommending an additional administrative staff position for a 2-year period to free up more time for the public works staff to devote to asset management. Also recommended is some additional funding to support for consulting support that we need from both the current consultant we're working with, and also to really make sure we capture the value from, there was some substantial effort undertaken in 2018 and 2019 that was stopped rather abruptly from the looks of it. And I think it's important to capture the value from that work that was done. So that there's certainly some milestones that we think we can achieve in 2023 that are identified in the report. That's by no means the only aspects of asset management we're working on, and we hope to advance some priority asset categories, including roads, culverts, and utilities, much closer to being in a position where we can look at financial scenarios and have a 5-year and 30-year capital replacement plan for those assets. But we've listed, that's unlikely to be complete in 2023. We've listed some milestones that we feel are achievable, and looking forward to having some resources to put some additional effort towards this. It's high priority for them. So just questions?
Yes. Councillor Morse and then Councillor Jurgensen.
I'm not sure whether this is a question for the Director of Engineering or the Chief Financial Officer. Is this being put in the budget? If we pass this resolution, it's going to be in there and it's going to be funded, or is it going into the budget for consideration of the overall budget?
I have included it later in the agenda. There was a report regarding direction to staff on property tax rates. So this request is included in the recommended direction to staff.
Okay, and my other question is, there are grant programs available for this. So would we be applying for, there's 2 intakes, there's one on May the 12th and there's one on September the 15th, just looking at the UBCM website. So we've had other grant programs in the past, so
yeah.
I don't know whether they look at the fact that, we've had others or what, but it seems to me it would be worth applying for another grant.
Yeah, it would. Part of, we do have a UBCM grant for some of the work that we're undertaking right now. And a portion of the additional consultant funds is for some increased scope for the work that consultant is doing. So we'd have to look at how that works with respect to the UBCM grant program.
So there is already some money in the budget for the asset management plan with an offsetting grant?
There's some grant money from UBCM in the budget this year, yes.
Okay. And this 20,000 is in addition to that?
Correct.
And the staffing position, would this free up? So one of permanent staff would be able to, being involved in the work so that we'd be able to carry on without needing assistance, and the extra staff person would be more doing administrative type stuff that didn't need any special knowledge? Not a lot of special knowledge.
It would be tasks that are time consuming and that can be relatively easily, knowledge relatively easily transferred, and how to carry them out to free up time for current staff to devote more time to asset management.
Just to Councillor Morse's first piece, I was in discussion with the corporate officer earlier in terms of the recommendation. It might make sense to move this recommendation later, as I know the CFO has this included in the budget already, and we'll be hearing about it from the financial side as well. So it might be doing the same thing twice. Any other questions? Councillor Fast?
No questions. I'm just glad to see this here. I think it's something we as council, and some earlier staff have been trying to get ahead of, get it up and running for a long time. So this is another approach, and it looks very practical to me. My question is there a lot of sort of basic data input at the beginning of this that you would need this 2-year temporary admin staff position, or what kind of admin tasks are you thinking for this?
Well, a two-part question, that there is a lot of asset inventory work, data input, and making sure that we have the right information where we need it. The tasks that this position would be doing would be more administrative tasks that current staff, current public works coordinator and utilities coordinator are currently doing.
Right.
And a lot of the asset management effort, including on the inventory, would be undertaken by those staff positions.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I really appreciate the thinking towards the building capacity in-house. I think that's an excellent move. I think it's adding an admin person allows for professional development of the staff as well, and lets them move into new spaces, and then also able to continue working on the plan as it goes. I'll look to the CAO or the director, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've done some asset management planning or consulting in the past where it was just left with us, and that we weren't really certain about what to do, what the underlying assumptions were, and it made it very difficult to work with that data and work with that plan.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree. I think we need to build that capacity internally. This idea would share that responsibility across 2 staff as well. So it's not just living with one either. So redundancy is important.
I'll just look for a motion to receive this report at this time, or Councillor Wake. Okay, motion to move to receive.
Second.
Second by Councillor Morse. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Graham. Now, one of our main events for the evening. Chief Financial Officer Kristen Watson for a number of items on the agenda. And just maybe a point of process, is it easier to go through each item and look at those recommendations as they come up? Or would you, okay, great.
That's how they've been structured.
Move right on, okay.
Just want to make sure I have the right item on the agenda. We are dealing first with the public consultation report.
So 8.3A, results of budget consultation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mayor. Through the chair, I would like to present my report tonight, which deals with the results of the public consultation process. The process ran from March 14th through March 31st. We held 2 informal open house type meetings. We had a full rundown of the budget through PowerPoint presentations. It was informal format, question and answer, comments, questions, requests for additional information directly from the public were received. We had 2 of those meetings. One was held in the evening and the second one was held during the afternoon to try and accommodate the needs of most islanders. I just checked the BIM BIM TV channel views of those meetings, and we've had a total of 58 views. So while not overwhelming, I understand that we've received almost double the participation rate that we have in prior years. So that's a big deal, that's a big win, and we'll, our aim will be to increase that awareness and that engagement in future years. Additionally, council held a committee of the whole meeting to discuss the impact of the property tax distribution ratio. And following this report, there's a report to report additional information on that. Council held a capital project information committee of the whole meeting where we discussed the state of our assets and the need for additional capital planning, long-term financial planning. A dedicated website or web page was established, which had detailed information regarding all of the budget information was made available. Frequent social media blasts through our Facebook page went out, and they all directed people back to our webpage to go and seek and find the information directly online. On March 23rd, the Undercurrent published front page a very detailed article, which they detailed the proposed 13.3% increase. They made reference to several themes that were brought up in the budget discussion. And we established a dedicated budget email address, and all of the feedback received from the public that was sent to this email address was responded to. All of that feedback has been included as an attachment to this report. Some of what we heard was concern, obviously, for a 13.3% proposed increase, and recurring thoughts around concern not to increase the level of debt anymore. We had significant negative feedback by way of several letters, mostly from the business community, about any changes to the business property tax distribution ratio. But certainly, given that most of it was from the business community, we certainly didn't receive an overwhelming or any, to my knowledge, encouraging a change to increase the ratio applied to business properties. We heard concerns about additional operating costs that will be attributed to the opening of the community center. And there were suggestions to repay the short-term loan that's currently outstanding for the fire truck in order to reduce our exposure to that debt and additional interest rate hikes. There were suggestions or concerns expressed from a resident about collecting taxes today for a cost that isn't going to happen until the future. So that was specifically in regard to the proposed establishment of the police fund reserve, the police tax funding reserve. But the wider implication of this, which we will discuss a little bit later, is the concept of collecting additional taxes now for costs that come in the future. And again, this is with respect or relevance to the whole discussion about collecting taxes now or in a couple of years in order to defray the future costs of infrastructure renewal and replacement. Overall, the formal budget period, it's now closed. We heard not a lot of feedback on the proposed 13.3% tax increase. Obviously, I think the park has played a big distraction from the budget process. But I do like to think that some of it has been the constant recurring communication of the message from staff, from council, and from members of the community too, who have expressed the need that we really do need to start looking at funding and supporting our need for infrastructure replacement. So the staff recommendation with regards to the public consultation process simply is that council receive the information. That's it. Receive your report.
I just wanted to add, I think we've had more involvement this year than we've had in past years. I can't remember how many we had on Zoom for the first meeting, and there were 23 people watching online. For the second meeting, I would suggest we don't need to have a second meeting next year. There was nobody on Zoom and nobody online. So second run through that we didn't maybe need to do. But I think the presentations were great and there were good questions and I think we've had, you know, better participation than we've had in the past and generally not a lot of upset or real concern.
Any other comments on this piece here, Councillor Wick?
Thank you through the chair. I think you've done a great job, Ms. Watson, of reiterating. It's kind of been a two-way street, but I really feel like during the election, there was a lot of concern about spending and thinking ahead and not getting caught flat-footed. And we've had, you know, a fair bit of that, and it ends up costing us more because we haven't prepared. So I fully support what you're recommending here, and I think we're doing the right thing, and I think we're doing what we were asked to do.
You, Councillor Wick? Just from the start, I really appreciate the report and the feedback. I really liked seeing it presented and all of the questions and then all of the responses. I think it was really well done. So if there's no other discussion, I'll look for a motion to receive this report and then we'll move on to the next item. Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on receiving the report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Moving on to 8.3B, adjustment of property tax ratio for utilities class.
Thank you. Through the chair to council. The report before you tonight is a recommendation to look at changing the property tax distribution ratio on utilities class 2 properties. The property tax distribution ratio is established within the financial plan bylaw itself. It sets out the various proportions of taxes that will be collected from each category of taxpayer. So on March 21st, council held a committee of the whole meeting. There was significant participation from the business members of the public who wanted to express their concerns about any changes to the business tax ratio. Now, out of that meeting, council directed staff to come back with options for considering changes only to class 2 properties, utility properties. And these properties include structures and land that are used by railways and pipelines and communications companies and electrical generation. They do not include small private water utilities on Bowen Island. The class 2 utility property tax ratios are capped by a provincial government regulation, and they are capped at the greater of 2.5 times the rate charged to businesses or $40 per $1,000 of assessed value. So looking at some of the other municipalities across the province, we see that approximately 1/3 to 1/2 of BC municipalities charge a rate that is greater to or almost equal to the maximum rate allowed under the regulation. We are one of the few municipalities that charge utility properties less than $10 per $1,000. Only 13 of the 166 municipalities in the province charge less than $10. 99 out of 166 charge over $30 per $1,000 of assessed value. So by increasing the rate on utility properties to 20 times the residential rate, the total property tax collection from these taxpayers will increase from about $18,000 a year to just over $80,000 per year. While again, it doesn't generate additional revenue, what it does is provide some tax relief to the residential class of to all the classes of taxpayers, but mostly to the residential class of taxpayers. It will effectively lower the effective rate of tax increase by about 1%. So the average property owner that owned a house of almost $1.5 million would see a savings on their tax bill of about $29 per year. Alternatively, rather than doing it all at once, council could consider a phased approach, maybe go half in first year and the second half in the second year. The recommendation included in the report is to do the full adjustment to the tax ratio and establish the residential rate to be set 20 times the utilities rate to be set 20 times the residential rate. And that will bring the tax rate to approximately $39.62 per $1,000 of value from what it currently is at $8.31 per thousand.
I'm just gonna close a couple windows sorry. I see people getting cold.
While Councillor Fast is closing windows, any questions from council on the property tax ratio? I know that we did discuss this extensively at the committee of the whole. None, is there a mover for the recommendation that council direct staff to increase the property tax distribution ratio on utility class 2 properties 4.16 to 20 times the residential rate? So moved by Councillor Wake. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Was that an aye or a nay, Councillor Jurgensen?
Late aye.
Aye, okay, right. Motion carries. 8.3C, summary of utility system budgets and user rates.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair to council, the report in front of you tonight, I'm pleased to provide. It details and summarizes the outcomes of 8 separate local service area meetings that were held with water and sewer systems to provide feedback and opportunities to consult with community members about the 5-year financial plans that were developed for each of the water and sewer systems. At the time the report was written, we had yet to have the meeting with King Edward Bay and Eagle Cliff. We met with them on Thursday night. And I will report that both of those local area committees approved the proposed rate increases. And in the case of Eagle Cliff, they both approved their 5-year plans with reservations. Eagle Cliff is in the process of waiting to hear back about a grant application for an interconnection capital project with Cove Bay. The recommendation to the committee is that irrespective of the outcome of that grant, work move forward on the design process to begin some detailed design work or some design work on moving that project forward, whether or not the grant is successful or not. Eagle Cliff local area committee is very supportive of the work moving ahead in the event that the grant is successful. However, they are not supportive of moving ahead with that work without the knowledge of the grant funding. So their approval is with conditions that the grant, that it's approved given the approval of the grant. In the case of King Edward Bay, there was approval to move forward with year 1 of the 5-year financial plan. And they categorically do not support years 2 to 5 of the financial plan. And, it is a very difficult financial plan to try to develop, given the fact that we don't know what that financial model is going to look like. Blue Water Park is investing a significant amount of money in a capital project, and we need to come up with a new cost allocation policy. We made that very clear to the committee that we really have to put something in because we're legislatively required to put something in, but we know and we are committed to beginning the consultation process just as soon as the budget wraps up so that we can come to an understanding between, hopefully with all of the support of the committee, so that we have a policy moving forward on which to distribute costs between the 3 systems. So that work will begin very soon. But for this year, at least, they did indicate support for the financial plan and support for the rate increases. So many of the systems have supported user rate increases. They are all on board and willing, and they recognize the importance of increasing those contributions to reserves. They are aware that that work will start imminently on a utility financing policy, which is going to inform how we develop those budgets going forward in the coming years, when we really understand what expectations are going to be for utilities to put money away into reserves and really move into a place where they can be financially viable for the long term going forward. So there is a chart in there that kind of details what the conversation was with each utility system, what the new rates will be going forward, and also provides an interesting snapshot of kind of the financial state of each system. So I took kind of a reserve fund balance, divided that by the number of connections, and it's interesting. You can really see the variance between funding in each of the systems. So if we took, for example, Hood Point, that has approximately $7,800 per connected property, against, say, Eagle Cliff that has $3,200 per connected property. I think taking this approach and looking at this and using this type of information in consideration with how old is the system, all of those pieces that will come from the asset management plan, this is going to be a way that we can start to move towards equity among our utility systems in the future, and making sure that we include in our policy a means of trying to encourage that our utility systems become more independent and more well-funded to ensure viability going forward. So the recommendation to council is that the draft 5-year financial plans for each of the water and sewer utility systems be included with the municipality's 5-year financial plan. And by moving and approving that recommendation, implicit in that is the rates that have been approved by the local area service committees, and those new amended rate bylaws and parcel tax bylaws will come forward along with the financial plan.
Any questions on water systems?
I saw Judy's hand.
Councilor Getty.
Thank you. On page 85, there's a financial plan for Cove Bay Water. And down at the bottom of the expenses, there's a transfer to the general fund. There's no similar transfer into revenues from the general fund. And there's a similar item, I think it's page 92, with the sewage. Let me just try and find it here. Yeah, the Bowen Island Municipal Snug Cove Sewer. There's a transfer from the general fund into revenue. And I don't see a transfer back out in terms of expenses. Oh, sorry. Yes, there is. So there's an in and out with the Snow Cove Sewer. There appears to be just a payment into general from Snow Cove Water. And I'm wondering what those differences are. I don't understand it. And at the bottom of the Snow Cove Sewer, under capital expenditures, I'm thinking that might be a typo in terms of capital projects. Water treatment plant. Is it sewage treatment plant on this page?
The last one, sorry, which page is it that you're looking at, Councilor Getty?
92, the Snug Cove Sewer, and it's capital expenditures. There's a list of 5 or 6 there, and it says capital project.
Yes.
Water treatment plant.
Yes, it should be wastewater treatment plant. Thank you.
Good catch.
Yeah.
So then for the sewage treatment, I'm wondering about the general, what are you calling it? Transfer to and from general fund. what's that about and the sewage and then the single transfer payment to the general fund in the Snug Cove water?
Yep. So there's two things. There is an internal loan from Cove Bay to the general fund, and that was use of the Land Opportunity Reserve Fund 2 years ago. So if you are a Cove Bay water user, you will see there's 2 parcel taxes on your property tax notice. One parcel tax has been levied to settle the loan for $2.5 million that we have through the Municipal Finance Authority. And the second parcel tax has been applied to repay the general fund for the use of the Land Opportunity Reserve Funds that were borrowed to complete construction of the water treatment plant, I want to say 3 years ago. So that internal transfer on the Cove Bay water system is, how much is it? Transfer.
176.
It's 107.
176 for 2023.
Yeah.
And 151.
Oh, I can't find it.
Subsequent years.
Transfer, oh, here it is, yeah, sorry. So transfer to general fund in 2023 draft, it's 176,000. So 124 of it will settle that internal loan that we have set up between the general fund and Cove Bay. About 25 of it is an annual transfer, and every water system pays a portion of it. There's about $50,000 that's transferred annually, shared among the water systems into the general fund. And it's to reimburse the general fund for use of like public works staff time as they deliver materials or equipment out to water system on behalf of water systems to fill holes in the road where they dug up to replace a water meter or something. The use of general fund purchased tools and equipment and shop supplies. There's $50,000 annually transferred from water funds to general fund to reimburse for that. And Cove Bay's share is about half of that. So that's 25. And this year particularly, there's a one-time transfer of 25,000 from Cove Bay to general fund. And that is for a piece of mobile equipment that is going to be moved from the public works yard up to the water treatment plant. And it's going to be used to move byproduct from the water treatment plant process from the actual building itself over to the disposal site, which is actually on site at the water treatment plant. So Cove Bay will have dedicated use of that public works vehicle, and we've assigned a value of that of about $25,000 for that piece of equipment. So those are the transfers that are happening between Cove Bay and the general fund. And then your second question was the wastewater, was the sewer treatment plant?
Yep.
So in the funding, I'm going to turn to that page. In the funding financing plan for the $1.6 million improvement that was that is still ongoing and taking place, a portion of that was allocated to general fund. I think 55% was allocated to general fund, and 45% of that whole project was allocated directly to the sewer users. So a parcel tax was established last year. The total amount collected was 106,000, and that amount was applied for 8 years to be repaid from the sewer fund to the general fund to repay their use of capital renewal reserve and accumulated surplus last year. So that 106,000 is that payment going back to the general fund. And then there's an additional one-time transfer from general fund to sewer fund for $100,000. Now that relates to the fact that the sewer treatment plant upgrade project is not yet complete. There was a report that the Director of Engineering brought to Council in June of last year where he requested additional funding because they were awarding the contract. They felt that it was going to go a little bit higher than what had been approved already. The direction, the council resolution was to direct the Chief Financial Officer to come back to council with a funding strategy in order to finalize the final costs of that project. It is almost wrapped up, it's almost complete. And we estimate that we're gonna need probably $100,000 more to complete it, what we had estimated last year. So that money is in there. And my job is, once they're all in, I'm going to come back to council with a recap of all of the money, which pots it came from. It's going to include this last $100,000 and ask for direction of how to fund that final $100,000. So that will happen, just, it's wrapped up.
Thank you very much.
Any other discussion on water system finances? Councillor Fast?
Just that I'm really happy to see that table on page 82, the one where you can kind of compare the states and the financial condition of the different water systems. I think that might also help people thinking about moving from or buying property in another part of the island or whatever, just to understand how the different parts of the island are different. And so there's no surprises. That's all I mean. But I like the idea of using this to keep a handle on how can it all be harmonized and more equitable going forward. So that was great to see. Otherwise, I don't think I've got any questions. That was the, thank you for the report.
Okay. Any disposition on the recommendations here? Councillor Fast?
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation that council include the draft 5-year financial plans for Cove Bay, Wood Point, Blue Water Park, Tunstall Bay, Eagle Cliff, Bowen Bay, and King Edward Bay water systems, and the Snug Cove sewer system with the municipality's 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan.
So moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Fast?
I'm just, I'm assuming that the reservations from the King Edward Bay system have been noted for years 2 to 5. And, but we're gonna have to put something in the financial plan, right? Yes, okay, thank you. Very good.
And we did make it clear at those meetings that years 2 to 5, usually, they will change.
Yeah.
They're not.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Motion carries. Just a note, thank you for that. I know that that's a real round robin doing the 7 water systems, and Councillor Moore supporting on those local advisory committees. So thank you for that. Moving on to item D, the draft 5-year financial plan with alternatives.
Can I ask, just before we do that, should we go back and pick up 8.2, the asset management one, before we pass the big one?
It is embedded in the recommendation. So if you support the recommendation, you are supporting the asset management plan.
You don't have to deal with it separately. Okay, thank you.
The CFO.
Thank you. Final report for me for the night. The report in front of council tonight is a recommendation that council provide direction to staff to draft the 5-year financial plan bylaw that implements a tax increase of 13.3% that has been socialized throughout the public consultation process, but it even goes one step further and recommends that that council implements a tax increase of 14.3%, as this is going to be enough to provide the resources for staff to implement council's resolution to prioritize asset management planning that was discussed at the committee of the whole meeting on March 21st. Again, the budget has been through a thorough, comprehensive public engagement process, including the 4 meetings on budget themes, the property tax ratio, and the capital projects, the meetings held with the local service areas. and extensive media coverage through the undercurrent and social media. So as a result of that public engagement process and informed by the discussions held at those committee of the whole meetings, tonight staff are recommending that direction be provided to increase property taxes by 14.3% as a way to ensure that the resources are available to implement the asset management plan. And lastly, that council give consideration to direct staff to include increased property taxes in years 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027 by increasing those amounts to 9.5% each. And the result then will be that those additional revenues will be contributed to the capital renewal and reserve funds and will be made available to support asset management and renewal. Options for council to reduce the current year property tax increase are limited. The interest and the debt principles are not optional. The staff increases are in line with council's adopted staff compensation policy. Reductions to the reserve funds that are included in the 5-year financial plan are not recommended. And a reduction to the transfer to the library board would definitely need to be weighed against the impact of service cuts. So the staff recommendation included in the report is based on the recognition that long-term pressure is the result of the cost of infrastructure, renewal and replacement, the cost of additional debt that has been taken on to build capital projects. And we are recommending tonight that council signal the need to continue to put money away into those reserve funds to deal with this long-term infrastructure deficit. Of course, this has to be balanced. It has to be balanced against the taxpayers' ability to pay. The current year addition of 1% will signal council's commitment to asset management, and the increase in years 2 to 5 will signal their commitment to increasing reserve fund contributions. Of course, this budget, as Councillor Morris just indicated, the years 2 to 5 are reviewed every year, and the amounts do tend to change. But by putting these amounts in for the future years, what council is doing is taking this opportunity to signal to the public of the need for increased commitment to asset renewal and replacement, and using this opportunity to signal their commitment to making sure that this happens. So the recommendation before you tonight is to increase property taxes by 14.3% over 2022 rates. Each 1% is effectively a $28 increase to the average property owner. So 14.3% would mean approximately $400 to each average property owner with a property worth approximately $1.5 million. So should council provide that direction to staff tonight, there is a statutory deadline to adopt a property tax, a 5-year financial plan and property tax rate bylaw before May 15th of each year. If council provides direction on the property tax bylaw tonight, we can ensure that the bylaws are adopted without the need for any special meetings, additional meetings. There are options there for council to consider additional opportunities for public consultation if council would like to go that route and do some more public consultation before providing direction to staff, then we will have to likely undertake a special meeting, which would necessarily need to be scheduled May 11th or 12th in order to meet that May 15th bylaw, statutory deadline for the bylaw. So with that, I'm happy to take questions from council.
Councillor Morse.
Can you just repeat the bit about the increase of the 1% is how much you said?
It's
not in the report.
It's about $28 per average property owner. for every 1%.
For each 1%?
Yeah.
So I thought you were multiplying that and getting a bigger number.
14.2.
So by 14.3, it's about 400.
Okay, so $28 is 1% for the average. And what is, have you happened to say how much that is per 100,000? So people don't have to go in, oh, there's the average value, so now I'll divide by.
I don't have that math right in front of me. I can,
done that.
I don't want to do it on the spot, but I can do it.
Okay, and all the detail in the report is based on the 13.3 and the changes and everything.
Correct.
Yeah, and I guess the other is, and everybody, and, you know, we always get asked if we're being efficient and that sort of thing. So we've got a policy that says departmental service plans will identify demand management strategies and will include options for service level efficiencies and or service level reductions. So everybody was instructed to do that when they were developing their plans for their department.
There were significant costs that were included in 2022 that were removed from before we even started the budget process this year. So, you know, we did not just start with, well, this is what we had last year, so now I need this and this and this. We started from a zero base.
Okay.
We start from a zero base every year.
Okay, so that's, I think, something we should be telling people. Yeah. And the same thought was sort of with the water systems as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other comments or questions on the draft 5-year financial plan? Councillor Saunders?
Yeah, I just want to say that nobody likes paying taxes and nobody really likes seeing their taxes go up. And I'm the same as everybody else. I don't like it. But given the frankly dire financial situation that faces us over the long term, if we don't do something, I think that the approach we're taking here is while it's painful to everybody, it's appropriate. It's not easy for anyone. But I'm pleased that we kind of seem like we're getting a grip on things, and we've got a chance to get a grip on things, and there is a solid plan moving forward. Thanks.
Councillor Morris.
When are we know what the Allen's Trust requisition is? Have we heard what Metro's is yet?
It just came at 4:30 in the afternoon.
We haven't heard on the police tax or the.
We don't get those rates until, we should get them this week, but yeah, they're all very late in the process.
I thought for some reason had this end of March deadline that they were supposed to let us know by, but.
It might be an interesting opportunity to talk about that police tax. We don't know. The RCMP, for the benefit of council, the RCMP is contracted with municipalities across the province to provide policing services. For communities such as ours under 5,000, they contract directly with the province, and the province assesses a portion of that cost to, they do it on a population per community basis.
And value.
So they aren't directly, the amount of police tax that small communities like ours pay aren't directly related to the number of officers that we have or the direct services that they get. We just get a share of the provincial whole. So we don't really know if we were on our own, would we be paying more than that or would we be paying less than that? We don't know what that looks like. But on March 29th, so this is an 11th hour, on March 29th, the federal government and the RCMP came to an agreement about the RCMP has outstanding liabilities from contract negotiations with the collective agreement of the RCMP members. So there was some discussion that perhaps the federal government would pick up the tab for all of those old outstanding retroactive salary increases that were owed to RCMP staff. There was some back and forth between the province and the federal government. It has just been announced on March 29th that the communities and the province will be responsible for picking up the tab. The federal government is not going to pay for that. So to communities over 5,000, they are going to be very shortly receiving a bill for the retroactive costs. So I would assume that municipalities over 5,000 who contract with the RCMP are scrambling at this very late hour to figure out they have 2 years to pay those bills. So I would think that that would be very disruptive in the whole financial planning process. For our communities under 5,000, where we don't pay those bills directly, we pay them indirectly through the province. They haven't said there's going to be impact to small communities. We don't know, but it is plausible that the police tax rates assigned by the province to us to levy on behalf of the province and submit police tax funds could be higher than typically in order to start to collect money to settle that outstanding liability relating to the retroactive salary increases. So we don't know, but it's interesting. It does not affect our municipal budget directly, but it affects property owners because they pay those taxes they pay police taxes on their property. So that line item on the tax bill may go up, but we have no information at this point.
There was a paragraph in the provincial budget. And they reduced the amount that they can collect 50%, but they reduce the amount they can collect by the share of the traffic fines. We don't get a lot of that, but that reduces the whole pot. And then, so that reduces our share. So they did say in the provincial budget that they were going to collect 33% of the costs after, they weren't going to reduce anything. The offsets for the traffic fines wasn't going to bring it down to them collecting anything less than 33%. Last year it was 31%. But the provincial budget was before the announcement.
Yeah, that's March 29th.
Feds. But I'm not sure if there won't be a 1-year lag because the feds will probably bill it this year. And so the cost increase, so it might not show up till next year.
As soon as I receive the rates from the province, I will put it together in a way that's easily consumable and just show if there's a real jump, in the amounts of police tax collected this year from prior years, and we'll be able to see.
Thank you, Councillor Getty.
We haven't had discussions about the, whatever that amount was that came in from the province in terms of their surplus. And we haven't had any notice from the federal government in terms of the grants that are outstanding for the community center. And I think there's a couple of other things that we were not including in the budget in terms of income. If we have those discussions and we get some of those grants, does this change for 2023?
No, it's those grant funding decisions are funding capital projects in a capital budget. The piece of the community center that is impacting the tax rate is the operating budget. So how are we going to staff it and how are we going to spend money on supplies to keep the building operational? So that doesn't have anything to do with the construction financing. And the other piece that is implicit in this budget, it doesn't create an increase, but if we took it out, it would effectively decrease it, is the fact that we've put aside $500,000 in last year's budget and $500,000 in this year's budget to fund capital costs in the community center. What we've also done by implementing that $500,000 collection in last year, in this year, and going forward is this is how we are coming up with contributions to other reserve funds. After this construction project is done, the plan implies that we continue to collect this $500,000 each year, but instead of using it for capital construction for the community center, we can now put that into a police tax reserve fund, or we can put that into the equipment reserve fund, or any one of those other funds. So it was established last year, it's continued this year, and the plan is to continue to collect that $500,000, but divert it to other reserve funds.
And just a comment on the
2.2.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that that has been allocated to a reserve fund for to hold until we have a better understanding of where it will be best needed at a later date.
If those donations or if that grant for the community center are unsuccessful, then council could consider using that provincial surplus grant to the Growing Communities Grant is what it was called. The council could consider using those funds to finish the community center. There is still a $2.2 million funding gap for construction that hasn't disappeared. And pending the outcome of the grant application and pending the outcome of the fundraising campaign, we'll be in a better position to make recommendations to council as to how they may want to allocate that grant.
All right. In the interest of time, I'll bring us back to the draft financial plan. What is council's disposition on item 8.3D? Councilor Fast?
I'm in support of this. I think it all makes sense that we get ourselves on that we get our municipality, our community services on a sound financial footing. And I'm in favor of the asset management and renewal kinds of provisions there too, that take it up to 14.3. I think that makes sense. And the communication about we need to deal with this long-term infrastructure deficit. Anyway, I'm in support of this and I'll be happy to move the motion.
Okay.
That council directs staff, I move that council directs staff to draft a 5-year financial plan bylaw for 2023 to 2027, which establishes the following annual property tax increases. 2023, 14.3%, 2024, 9.5%, 2025, 9.5%, 2026, 9.5%, 2027, 9.5%.
Thank you, Councilor Fast. Seconded by Councilor Wake.
Okay, or John was seconding too.
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Fine.
Any discussion on the motion here? Councilor Getty?
So some of the 13% was announced to the community. The 14% is new. This is a motion to get staff to draft the 5-year budget with the 14%, but we can still hear back from the community, right?
That budget feedback email is still active. We monitor it daily and respond to recommendations or questions. And at the pleasure of council, we can continue to provide any additional feedback received through that email address with every subsequent report that comes forward.
Okay. I'm thinking that people, once they figure out these water bills and people that are in the sewage district and this tax bill, that we might be getting some feedback. Maybe not.
In all three of those categories.
Yes, and from this chair, and I think, I might have some comments about this when we get to some of the elements in our strategic plan. In my conversations in the community, there's not a lot of surprise so far that we need to spend on infrastructure, and that those costs are going to be expensive. There seems to be a general understanding that we live on an island, that our roads and culverts are in bad shape, that our water systems need repair, and that historically we really haven't squirreled away for those things. And that said, I do very much appreciate the comments, particularly as a family on the island that just bought a few years ago, that large tax increases do put an onus on property owners. And this is a 5-year financial plan that's going to increase taxes. And we might, not see the end of it because there are feeling into some of the reports from our CFO as well as our director of engineering. There's a lot of unknowns that we just aren't certain of, particularly as the asset management plan shakes out and we figure out more clearly what the costs are. So that said, and even in my conversation with councillors, I think everyone around the table is very sensitive to what it costs to live on an island, on an aging infrastructure. However, there appears to be no way out from the fact that it's time to invest and it's time to get our asset house in order so that we're ensuring the resilience and sustainability of our community going forward. I'm in support of this plan, even though I know that it is a hit over the next 5 years. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 And that carries unanimously. Moving on. Our favorite item, 8.4, the CAO update.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
And thank you to the CFO
for all your hard work on this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
So I'll do a quick summary of some of the capital projects. I'll try to keep it really quick, noticing the hour. So the community center continues to make good forward progress. And I think we'll canvass council for a site visit in the not so distant future. I think we talked about this perhaps last time.
Did we do?
No, I don't think we've canvassed yet. And
But I don't know if there was a good date.
oh, we did?
Yeah, Valentina.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. The wastewater treatment plant, as stated earlier, is aiming to be completed by the end of this month, and then we'll do a more thorough analysis of the capacity that phase 1 upgrade has provided, as well as the additional work that was done for the patching of the system for the inflow and infiltration throughout the system. So fingers crossed for good news there. And the Cove Bay drinking water project is also should be, I feel like I've been saying this a lot, so it should be complete within the next month or so, as it requires the final commissioning and sign off with the health authority. Again, with the Eagle Cliff drinking water connection project, we're still awaiting news on the grant funding for that. And this Blue Water Park drinking water project also, we're waiting to secure the borrowing and the financing to start advancing that project. The multi-use path project is focusing in on the next phase, which is from Artisan Lane to Charlie's Lane, and doing some more detailed design work for that phase. It's a very challenging phase, really steep terrain, and also need to have further discussions with some of the property owners that are at Charlie's Lane terminus of that portion. And we continue to discuss the next leg beyond that with staff and other parties about what the best approach is there for the next leg of the path. And that's it for most of the capital project updates. Just a more so a heads up that what I'll try to do is bring a letter of appreciation and thanks from Mayor and Council to the next meeting for that provincial grant that we received. I think we talked about that casually, and so I think it'd be good to formalize that. And as well, I'll also be reaching out to the Islands Coast Economic Trust. It's a regional economic trust established by the province around 2005, and we're making a big pitch to the provincial government for an injection of funding to breathe life back into their program, and I'm not sure whether that happened.
Yes. There was a news release last week.
Oh, there was? Okay.
Yeah.
I know
Not a
they,
huge amount.
no, they got a small amount, like a $1.475 million contribution to rural, can't remember what it was called, but it wasn't what they were looking for.
They refunded all three of them in the press release.
Okay, I'll have to look into that, 'cause it's.
I thought I sent it around.
Well, it'd be good to get a better update of where that is, because part of our request was to formal recognition and a boundary extension of their region to include us. And
Yes.
So I'm not sure if that was part of the announcement either. And then we had a good discussion at one of our recent meetings about the request from the Squamish Nation about a contribution towards their Squamish Days in the summer, and I was going to have lunch with the CAO and discuss that. Lunch has been postponed indefinitely, and so I don't know when it'll be a while before we get a chance to have lunch, and so I'll want to bring that back to the table to see what council wants to do there. But unfortunately, I won't have any direct information from their CAO. And that's it for my update.
Thank you. Councillor Fast, and then Councillor Wick.
Thanks. I think I saw might have been in the Island Page or somewhere, some notice that Art Renison Nature Reserve had been now dedicated over to municipality. Is that accurate, or did I dream that? I know it will eventually come to us. I'm just wondering if it's actually municipal.
Right. There was a lot of back and forth there. So I know that the developer, John Reed, put an ad in the paper.
Maybe that's what I saw.
But at that time, the transfer hadn't been finalized. And I think I'm going to look to Daniel Martin to see if he knows. But we were waiting on bated breath for it to have been fully secured, at which point we would then have our own notice.
Thank you. That's great. I just was confused there. I saw it a little while ago and I was wondering.
Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Wick.
Back to the Cove Bay Water Treatment Plant for a moment. So my understanding was for a while we were waiting on the final parts to be installed. And my understanding now that we're not waiting on parts anymore, everything's been installed. Now it's just commissioning and testing.
And there is some challenges with, for lack of a more technical term, the internet. So there is a need for the systems within the treatment plant to be able to connect remotely with the treatment plant technology provider, as well as another technician. And there's been some challenges with our internet connection. Some elements around firewall protections and things like that. And our internet service provider has been involved, but it's not proven to be as simple as we would hope to resolve that. And I think once that internet connectivity issue is resolved, then they can do the proper testing to achieve the green light from the health authority.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9, correspondence 9.1, Rob Duffy, Blue Water Park LSA grant funding request of March 27, 2023.
Back in a minute.
I note from the recommendation that the CAO spoke to the letter of the Blue Water Park System Advisory Committee meeting held March 28, 2023. Any discussion or comments on this piece before looking to receive?
I could reiterate my comments that were made at the meeting if desired. Essentially, I stated that it the direction, or not the direction, the advice and recommendation from staff would be to move that money into a reserve and to hold it until a later date when we had a better understanding of where the greatest need would be. And the preferred use of the funds would be towards a benefit for as many, if not all, of the taxpayers on the island, rather than a individual local areas service.
Okay. So the recommendation is therefore be it resolved that council receive the correspondence from Rob Duffy dated March 26, 2023 for information. Is there a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion carries. Councillor Fast absent. Item 9.2, Callum Campbell, Green Line Ferries regarding passenger-only ferries for Bowen Island. Next steps dated March 29th, 2023. So on this, I know both the CAO and myself have had conversations with Mr. Campbell. I believe he's looking for just a general letter of support saying that we endorse the idea of the electric passenger shuttle ferry between Vancouver, Bowen Island, and the Sunshine Coast. Is there anything that you'd want to add to that, or does it appear that he's just looking for a general?
I think at this time, a letter of support in principle for the proposal for them to do feasibility studies. They're working directly with Gibson's right now, and I think a further letter of support from another municipality would be beneficial. There's some details that I've requested some clarity on that I think we can get that clarity, and it might then be something where we would want to explore a feasibility study explicit for Bowen as well.
Councillor Fast?
Yeah, thank you. I support this recommendation. I spent a little bit of time looking up what our plans say. So in our climate action strategy, for example, on page 3, number 1, goal number 1 includes expanded foot passenger marine and express bus service, new options for foot passenger marine service, reducing emissions by electric ferry. And then I looked at our transportation plan as well, and on page 23, under the heading alternative ferries, it's about shift focus from vehicles to passengers and consider electric ferries. So we've got, it aligns with some of our already adopted goals and strategies. And I think it would be a good way to make sure that there's more options with a simple letter of support to the Green Municipal, or to, for green, whatever they need for their grant application to the Green Municipal Fund. Good idea.
Councillor Morse?
In quickly reading his submission, by us supporting their application, does that mean they'll include Bowen in the study area?
I don't know that we would be included in this.
Yeah, I mean, it was the line that says there's
Yeah.
probably room for Bowen Island to
Yeah.
join in this application, so.
One of the questions of concern that I have is around providing direct assistance to business. And so we have to be extremely cautious about that as a municipality. And so I'm trying to get a better understanding of how it is that we would be applying for grant funding to do a feasibility study specifically for Green Line ferries. So it may be that the feasibility study wouldn't be explicit or specific for Green Line ferries. It would just be more broad in general. That's one of the details that I would like to get sorted out. And I'm not sure, I want to reach out to Gibson's as well to better understand how it, because Gibson's is the applicant for the Green Municipal Fund application, and is contributing finances towards the study. And so I think there's likely a way for us to do it. It's just, it's not clear to me right now how.
When's the application deadline?
This, there's no.
It's a revolving fund?
My understanding it's a submit as you go, and they are applying by the end of April for this particular project.
My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but to be included, I couldn't get a clear answer from this in my conversations with Tom, Mr. Campbell, is that Bowen Island would need to contribute money to have Bowen Island included as part of the feasibility study.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
So the fund, the Green Municipal Fund doesn't pay 100% of the study?
No, they pay, I wasn't clear as to exactly which fund. There's multiple funds under the GMF. If it's the fund I think it is, they will pay up to 80%, I believe, to a total of 175,000. And so I believe that the current application that Gibson's is submitting is for a total of 220,000. And I believe that I'm not going to quote any more numbers. I'm not.
Yeah. Maybe we can get more information on the 21st.
Councilor Fast?
Yeah, I was just thinking, if you're going to be talking to Gibson's anyway, maybe our letter of support would be for our neighboring community, Gibson's, depending on what you find out, rather than for Green Line Ferries business. I don't know. Depends on what would be most useful, I think, to the idea of having foot passenger electric ferries in the in Howe Sound. And I'll just note, I did take a quick look at the Green Line Ferries website, and they do talk about Bowen Island. I think they came here and visited, and that's sort of part of their plan, so we're mentioned there.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Mayor, if I may, and I just want to be really clear, that if we're going to do any work in this space, that we want to be really very clear that we're not providing direct assistance to Green Line Ferries, and that because there are other water taxi services, that have may or may not be concerned about that, and we want to be really fair and equitable on how we treat any of this.
Well, it is a service to downtown Vancouver, right? That they're proposing.
Yes.
Yeah, not to Horseshoe Bay.
Could we?
Councilor Moore says.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking at, I don't think we can pass a recommendation the way it is.
That's right.
Yeah, so council consider providing a letter of support for Gibson's application for, to the Green Municipal Fund.
Regarding Green Line Ferries.
I don't even know if we want to say.
It could just say regarding.
I'm going to tease things out here. Councilor Morse is still using.
I guess the other thought is to talk to some of our sources at Urban Systems. I mean, that is whether they're actually, on board and have quoted for the job. Yeah, it seems to me, I think we just say that council can provide a letter, direct the CAO to have conversations with Gibson's with respect to us providing a letter of support for their application to the Green Municipal Fund.
I would have no problem providing a letter of support in principle for the proposal, electric passenger ferry service between Vancouver, Bowen Island, and the Sunshine Coast, and I would provide that to any operator.
Well, they're not applying for the fund.
Yeah.
Gibson's support to business, so if it's a letter of support for Gibson's application.
Yeah, Gibson's is the applicant.
Yeah.
And so, but I think to the mayor's point, it could be simply that council consider providing a letter of support.
Or is the council support in principle, a letter of support for Gibson's application to the Green Municipal Fund for electric passenger ferry service in-house out to Vancouver.
I suppose one of the considerations is that would we get a request for a letter then every time Green Line is looking for funding, whether they're going to the feds or the UBCM or?
We're not supporting Greenland, we're supporting Gibson's. In the hopes that maybe we might get more than one coin.
I agree with the wording that, I was trying to say the same kind of thing. I think I'm thinking along the same lines as Councillor Morse.
Okay.
So if Sophie was able to capture that.
Capture Sophie.
Council support in principle, providing a letter of support for
Gibson's application to the Green Municipal Fund for electric passenger ferry service from Howe Sound to downtown Vancouver. Gibson's is in Howe Sound and we're in Howe Sound.
Okay, so I have that council support in principle, providing a letter of support for Gibson's application to the Green Municipal Fund for electric passenger ferry service between Vancouver, Bowen Island and the Sunshine Coast.
Is it for a study? I guess. Maybe do we need to throw in the word study?
It's their application, whatever it's for.
Yeah, it's their application. I'm also unclear as to what this is actually directing. Are we supporting?
Well, the other preamble is that we could support in principle and request a CAO to discuss same with the CAO of Gibson's.
Or is the actual intent just to send a letter?
We don't know what to say in the letter. When you're sending letters of support, you have to sort of at least know what they're asking for.
Can we direct the CAO to connect, what's the word I want, to communicate with Gibson's and find out if there's a way we can support their application? Inquire as to, is that what you're intending to do? Would you like us to direct you to do?
No, I was gonna follow up with Gibson's anyway, so, but I think it's more so the direction to write a letter in print, a letter of support.
But if they don't want one, then we don't want a memo.
I think according to Callum Campbell, a letter from another municipality in support of the application would be viewed favorably.
I'll second Councillor Morse's motion.
How did I move, Sophie?
So you had moved that council support in principle, providing a letter of support for Gibson's application to the Green Municipal Fund for electric passenger ferry service between Vancouver, Bowen Island and the Sunshine Coast.
No, for electric passenger service from Howe Sound to downtown Vancouver. Gibson's won't be pulling up for study.
I didn't catch that.
Do we need to sort of tidy it up to say and that we request the CAO to discuss same with the CAO of Gibson's?
He's gonna do it anyway. He doesn't need our motion.
Yeah, I would assume he does it anyways.
Yeah. So by saying in principle then, if the discussions don't go well, we don't do it.
I feel like our process is getting a little, because I don't really know where we are or what exactly it is that we're asking.
Well, I guess what I was trying to accomplish with the motion that the letter of support could be drafted and sent if there's positive discussions between the two CAOs. supplying a letter of support.
Right.
Because we're supporting another local government, not private enterprise.
Well, for this, I mean, the interesting piece about this is that we've had Green Line Ferries come, they've done an open house, they've come in front of our council, they want to do service to Bowen Island. So, I mean, it's in support of Gibson's application, but it's also in support of Bowen Island. And from my seat, I will support anybody that wants to do passenger anything between Bowen Island and the mainland and wants to get funding for that. And I just worry that maybe we're overthinking our letter of support here.
Yeah, I would agree, Mayor. I think it's a simple letter of support, and I would send it to the CAO of Gibson's to include in their application. We wouldn't be sending it direct to FCM.
Oh, no, I wasn't thinking of doing that.
Okay.
That would be great. And then if they really hate it, they wouldn't attach it. That's all. But I would be surprised if they didn't attach a letter of support from a neighboring community. Let's vote before we fall asleep.
Okay, so what are we voting on? Can we just have the motion again?
So I have a motion that is moved and seconded.
Okay.
And that's council support in principle, providing a letter of support for Gibson's application to the Green Municipal Fund for electric passenger ferry service between Howe Sound and downtown Vancouver.
Sure. Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to new business. 11.1 is the adoption of our strategic plan. And for the folks who are watching online or who might pick up on this, attached to the agenda this evening is our strategic plan for 2023 to 2026. And this is a departure from, speak on behalf of council here, but council, if I'm going out on a limb or something comes out of left field, feel free to jump in and correct me, is a departure from the strategic plans that have been done in the past. We've moved more towards identifying themes and lenses that we're looking to evaluate our projects and initiatives and actions on. We understand that there's a lot going to be thrown at us. There's a lot coming up that we've seen already, from Cape Roger Curtis to the budget to zoning applications and desires for a new OCP. And if we felt it valuable to identify strategic themes that we can evaluate those against. And in our strategic plan, if the community takes a look at it, you'll see 4 of them. One is that we'd like to move towards a diverse and resilient community. The second is strong infrastructure and asset management. The third is having an engaged community and effective government. The last is responsible ecosystem protection. And all 4 of those themes had a lot of conversation on them, both from the staff who were present in the strategic planning as well as our council, and they all felt, as we distilled our themes down, felt really important. So a diverse and resilient community stretches in a lot of directions, from housing to our sociological aspirations to the ability to bounce back from the pandemic, the ability to have resilience in our systems and processes and governance and community. Strong infrastructure and asset management. I think we've heard a lot about that here today, just recognizing and owning and being accountable for our infrastructure deficit, really knowing what's in the ground and what's coming given the pressures that we're facing from growth in the region to climate change. All of these are going to have an impact on our infrastructure and asset management. An engaged community and effective government. We have a very engaged community on Bowen Island. As I have learned from my first few months here as mayor, I knew that we were engaged, but now I know how really engaged we are. And I believe the council believes and staff believes that the onus is on us to really create the platform and create the riverbanks for that engagement so that we can all move together in a flow in the same direction, so that we're not at odds with each other. I think the community looks to us to be efficient and effective and make thoughtful choices with them in mind based on that engagement that we have. And that's why this, I think really came up as a theme in our strategic plan. And the last is responsible ecosystem protection, and certainly not least. We know with our being situated in a UNESCO biosphere region as part of the preserve and protect mandate of the Islands Trust to preserve and protect the island for all residents of British Columbia, that ecosystem protection is paramount. And from what I've been seeing in the region and the trajectory of the region, when we talk about regional growth, when we see tourism on the island, when we see the pressures that Bowen Island not necessarily has to withstand, but has to advocate for their place within, as well as channel and adapt to as the years go forward, and being responsible stewards for our ecosystem, I think ultimately is going to benefit our residents, but also benefit our region as we protect these lands and manage them responsibly. So on the next page, for folks that are taking a look, we've got some what do we call these? So blurby blobs.
Venn bubbles?
Yeah, Venn, that's way more eloquent and articulate at this hour of the evening than blurby blobs. But you'll notice that there's the 4 colors of our themes, and then on top of those are specific initiatives that we've talked about and that we'd like to move towards. A lot of these don't have specific plans in front of them. They involve conversations that are ongoing. They involve loops that are open and conversations that have to be had in dialogue with the community. So this isn't really a strategic planning this time around wasn't a top-down exercise. It's really what are the stakes that we want to put in the ground, and as a result, in the next 4 years, how are we going to go out in the community and start building out the structures that are going to rest on top of them. So with that, unless anyone's really itching to add something, I'll look for a motion that council adopt the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan. So moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion?
May I?
Yes.
I did have some accessibility challenges with this document when trying to review it over the weekend, and wonder if it's possible to defer adoption until I've had a chance to go over this with staff, so I make sure I'm capturing everything that is in the plan. I just don't feel comfortable moving to adopt something if I don't have all the information at this point.
Okay, so there can be you can make a motion to defer until the next meeting if you'd like, Alex.
Okay. In which case I would ask that we could make a motion that council defer the adoption of the strategic plan until the April 24th, 2023 regular council meeting. I assume that's the next opportunity at which we could adopt it.
Yes. Seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion on postponing until the next meeting? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 11.2, partnership with Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing. Councillor Wake.
Okay, and following right on the heels of the plan, the strategic plan, which I hoped was already adopted, but not quite. In the upper left-hand corner of the bubble diagram, we've got facilitate creation of diverse and affordable housing. And that's what this next item is, I think, an important step towards. So I have recommendation is that council approve in principle undertaking a more formal partnership with Birch, the Bowen Island Resilient Community Housing Society, to help expedite funding applications for the development of affordable housing projects on Bowen Island. The report, I won't read it out. I don't have a presentation, but it basically indicates the background behind how we came to discuss this. And Mayor Leonard, chime in at any point if you have something to add. But we had a meeting back in January 30th, and I've outlined in the notes what the discussion was at the meeting in terms of some background on Birch and the Miller Road project, how its operational funding, where it's come from, and the outcome of the application for funding to BC Housing in 2021. And work now beginning on a new application in partnership with the Lookout Society. And a new call for applications is anticipated for later in 2023. So then we had a discussion around exploring the possibility of a partnership. And there's a list of possible actions there. And in order to begin working on this and working with the concept here is that we'll have a better chance of bringing a project to fruition on Bowen with Birch if we have a more solid, a clear partnership. And rather than us standing by and watching and approving as Birch moves forward, we'll actually be moving forward with them. And this is the way successful projects have been done in other communities, is when the nonprofit and the municipality work together. In some places, they're actually, part of the same organization. I think what we're proposing here is a partnership. So I'm here tonight to present the concept of a partnership to council and look for approval for that concept.
Possibly just to add for folks that might not be familiar with the report, in the report there's a captured in the notes is a number of discussion around possible actions and then some next steps. Key ones are the concept or the idea of a land transfer to Birch, in addition to a deeper partnership, looking at an agreement for Bowen, for the municipality and Birch to work together, as well as the future of the relationship. So there was a number of possibilities discussed in terms of affordable housing on the island and Birch's potential role in that. And the discussion from this chair, and really I defer to Councillor Wake's much more extensive knowledge in the housing area than mine. But at this point, rental housing and affordable housing is an amenity unto itself in the community. And we know that the pressures that folks are facing, and our conversation with Birch and knowing the history of the folks on that board and in that community and how they've been working is feels like a good one. And it feels like it's just needs to happen and it's about time.
And if I can add to that, one consideration here was that up until now, Mr. Martin and the planning department have had to take on the load of sort of managing the relationship and what sort of with Birch as an applicant and the planning department, the council responding. And rather than doing that, if we came together, Birch could actually do some of this legwork, take on some of the responsibilities of needs assessments, qualification for housing programs, any number of things that right now are kind of drifting, nobody really taking responsibility for them here. So the idea of working together is also hopefully going to relieve the already heavily burdened planning department of working on these things.
Right. Questions for Councillor Wake? I think I saw Councillor Morris's hand first, then Councillor Fast.
Well, we're well over an hour into our overtime. I have no problem in undertaking a more formal relationship relationship, not partnership, with Birch to help expedite their funding applications for development of affordable housing projects on Bowen. So if that's the resolution, that's fine. I've got a lot of problems with everything else that's listed in here. And a lot more discussion that I would want to have thought. And one of the other things is we did send out to our requests for expressions of interest for help for people who might be interested in developing some of our community lands for affordable housing projects. And I don't know how all these roles, how you would have a competing entity supervising the other applicant. So I've got lots of discussion. I have no problem with a motion that council approve in principle, undertaking a more formal relationship with Birch to help expedite Birch's funding applications. But that's all I'm willing to support tonight without a lot more information. And also the fact that we've just passed a budget which has no money in there for providing funding for anything.
So I think what this is looking to do is explore those questions, not approve in principle that we're going to explore that.
Well, it doesn't say explore in the resolution. And as I said, I'm happy to be more involved in their funding applications and supporting them and doing that. But the exploration and everything else is a separate project, separate resolution.
Councillor Fest?
Thank you. I'm generally in support of this. I think the challenge is enormous. I've been looking at this on a number of other islands as well. And some projects are finding their way through partnerships. And the different workshops and things I've been to, of course, I know nothing of the intricacies as Councillor Waite does. That's part of his profession, as I understand it, right? So we're kind of getting some professional advice here through council. But anyway, I'm in favor of something more formal. I'm fine with taking out the word partnership and replacing it with the word relationship for now, if we want to pass something tonight, and to get the ball moving, or if we want to change the word undertaking to explore, if this would help council come together. It's also might be something we want to defer for a later meeting when we've got a bit more energy and we don't have a closed meeting in front of us, still to come. But I would like to ask a question about the Lookout Society. What would their role be in here? I was reading the report thinking, oh, I get to find out about the Lookout Society's role. Maybe you can just quickly describe.
Yes, so, and it's a good example of why partnerships work better. So one of the main reasons that the last funding application was rejected was that Birch had no track record of building projects. And so it gets into this catch-22 of how do you get a track record if you can't get a project? By partnering with Lookout, they've got a huge track record, and they're very interested in working with us here, and they're already doing some work, not quite the same as I understand it. And they have a good relationship, and that really strengthens. And I'm just suggesting we need to get in there as well. And it doesn't commit us to doing, anything more at this point, except looking at ways that we can help each other. And if the municipality is in support of a funding application, similar to what we're talking about with the Green Municipal Fund, I think that strengthens the application. And it sends the message that the municipality is completely supportive of the direction, and that really the housing organization is working on our behalf.
Thank you. Yeah, that's similar to what I've seen another housing association called Macola doing with another island. Anyway, I can't remember. It's getting late. But is there a motion?
Well, I'd be fine to change the word partnership to relationship.
Okay, then I'll move, just to keep the ball moving here, if you guys don't mind.
Absolutely.
If you're okay with this, Tim? Okay. That council approve in principle undertaking a more formal relationship with Birch to help expedite funding applications for the development of affordable housing projects on Bowen Island. I move that.
Who seconded that? Councillor Saunders. Any discussion? Councillor Morse?
I would like to move an amendment to insert the word birches in front of funding applications.
So it would read the council approve in principle undertaking a more formal partnership with Birch. Relationship with Birch to help expedite Birch's funding applications, development of affordable housing projects on Bowen Island. Is there a seconder for that amendment?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Wake. Without objection, I'll just call the question on it. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The amendment passes and we are back at the main motion. Any discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Is Alex still with us?
Alex is still with us. You did just come off mute.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 11.3 and 11.4. 11.3, update to council on Metro Vancouver business. Clearly, we've heard about Cape Breton Curtis, so I don't think we need to update on that. We know where we're going. Some of the big pieces in Metro over the last couple of weeks, the Minister of Transportation, Rob Fleming, presented to the full board at our meeting last week, just updating us on transportation in the province. Did not have the opportunity to talk to him about BC ferries. However, it was really focused on some of like George Massey Crossing and bridges and major highways. After that, Metro Vancouver, the board of directors participated in strategic planning for the duration of the weekend. And interestingly enough, the biggest word that came out of that strategic plan, and appears to be where the board wants to move, is the notion of resilience. So resilience in the region and resilience of the island is, it's really coming up a lot across Metro Vancouver. The Climate Action Committee just endorsed and approved Metro Vancouver's Climate 2050 Energy Roadmap and Metro Vancouver's Climate 2050 Nature and Ecosystems Roadmap, which are two very interesting documents that I think would have value to Bowen Island and its committees. They support the regional growth, Metro 2050, the regional growth strategy, which we do not participate in. Just to let everyone know, I took some questions on that from the community this week. And apart from, there was the Mayor's Committee meeting. The probably, sideways interesting thing about that is that we were due to have a discussion on amongst the mayors on a fireworks ban roundtable about what other municipalities are doing around fireworks. And I know it's an issue on Bowen Island. That was postponed until our next meeting, so I'll update everyone on that. Any questions on Metro Vancouver? Seeing none, moving on. TransLink got close to $500 million. They successfully signed their agreement with the province to their gap funding, and that's been the only major news around the Mayor's Council over the last little while. Moving on to update from the Islands Trust. I'll look to Councillor Fast in the room.
Just that I attended a Trust Programs Committee meeting where we recommended to Trust Council spending $3,200 on to support the Alkitsum Howe Sound Community Forum through Secretariat sort of function, minutes, meeting announcements, notices, that kind of thing. That's all I had to report.
Lost you.
Councillor Getty?
Well, in my spare time, I've been working on the agenda for the governance committee, but that's moving along. We've got a meeting next week. So I haven't heard of anything else that has been happening and that's of particular interest.
Any questions about the Islands Trust? Seeing none, item 11.6, the recommendation is that council move to a closed meeting immediately following the regular council meeting to discuss items pursuant to section 91 G and I of the community charter, G being litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Is there a mover for that motion? Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 13, question period. Question period is an opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask a follow-up
Nobody here.
question. There are some folks online, so I will ask anyways. Questions must relate to an item on the agenda. Questions must be directed to the mayor. 2 questions per speaker and must not exceed 3 minutes. Are there any questions for council this evening online?
Hands up.
No hands up. With that, I will look at item 14, a motion to adjourn. So moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. We will have a short recess and return.
I thought he was hanging around for the legal action.